everybody. Thank you for attending today's event. Each year, we at EMA conduct survey-based research on a wide range of IT-related topics. Today's webinar summarizes key takeaways from my latest application performance management focused research, which was published in June of this year under the same name as this webinar, and that is currently published as a link on our website in case anybody would like to go back to the original study. So before I start my presentation today, I did want to thank the sponsors for that co-sponsored with EMA in developing and conducting the survey for this event, which includes Pika, Riverbed, and BMC. So thanks so much to the guys over there at those companies. So, you know, our reasons for doing this study, there are actually always numerous reasons for the particular topic areas that we chose. So my reasons for doing a study this year on APM was primarily because of the tight fit that we are finding between various other types of research that we conduct and the topic of APM. So two separate 2015 studies found tight links specifically between digital transformation initiatives and the use of APM. A third study on the topics of DevOps and continuous delivery in the prior year also uncovered strong dependencies between acceleration of software delivery and the use of APM toolsets. So as you'll hear later today in this event, this study happened to reinforce that finding as well. So based on past findings, it appears that the time is right to revisit APM as a pillar of the digital economy that supports quite a number of of additional hot topics that we're hearing a lot about today. So why now? Well, software is at the core of the digital economy. It enables companies to flexibly adapt to changing industry and consumer trends, as well as to the tidal wave of new technologies that we've seen during the past few years. However, modern applications require new management tools capable of monitoring through cloud services, for example, through API connections, through containers, microservices, and similar modern constructs. These types of execution platforms increase the levels of abstraction between application components and physical reality. This makes them difficult to manage with many traditional tools and support practices. The collective impact of all of these factors combined is increasing complexity across the ecosystem. And as complexity grows, so does the cost of supporting it. From this perspective, application delivery has become a balancing act between delivering high-performing services and doing so at a reasonable cost. So let's first take a quick look at the methodology that we use to conduct this research. Survey questions dealt with all aspects of modern application delivery and included focus areas such as tools and technologies in use, key support challenges, and the business drivers for APM-related purchases. We fielded and conducted the survey during April of this year, and it included approximately 200 plus data points, and we conducted it against about 150 survey respondents. All respondents were directly involved with or responsible for enterprise application delivery at their companies. So they were very familiar with application delivery and the challenges that their companies were encountering. Once the data came in, we analyzed it from a variety of vantage points. So in addition to doing a full analysis of all the respondents, I also do sub-analyses based on approximately 30 additional subsets of the data and crosstabs. Each type of analysis contributes to an understanding of the data from a specific personnel or technology-related perspective. Analysis by role is important, for example, because each role has specific knowledge and expertise that's typically not duplicated in the other roles. Executives, for example, have a broad understanding of things like budgets, high-level issues, and business objectives that line staff may lack. On the other side of the coin, line staff have intimate knowledge about the day-to-day operations and the sorts of in-the-trenches challenges that management may lack. So the mix of the roles in this study was about one-third high-level executives, one-third middle managers, one-third line staff. In terms of company size, about 15% of the respondents were from companies with fewer than 1,000 employees, half were from mid-sized, and the rest, about 35%, were from large companies. Now, there are going to be a few occasions during this webinar where I talk with you about what these sorts of crosstabs and slices and dices revealed, primarily in those areas where there turned out to be statistically significant differences. So I'll let you know what I'm talking about when I start doing those slices and dices. So as I analyze these types of research studies, as I go through the findings, I always come up with maybe 10 to 20 that tend to be sort of a surprise to me, or that I think are particularly powerful based on some of the research that we've done in the past. So the 10 that I'm covering today are those that just sort of stuck out to me as I went through this huge massive data. Of course, it's, we don't have the time that would be necessary to go through the whole data set. So one of the first observations I made is that cost clearly remains a top issue. Both costs relative to new rollouts and those related to ongoing production support were significant concerns. As you'll see in a few minutes, this finding is directly relevant to many of the other findings of this report, most notably those relating to the heterogeneity and scale that we're seeing with the complex application deployments that are happening today, along with the high rates of change, of production change we're seeing from initiatives such as continuous delivery in particular. So the second top takeaway related to mainframes and the way they are being utilized today, and I know so many people, really don't think of the mainframe as even being part of modern applications, but the fact is they're way more important than I think most people realize. Approximately 25% of the organizations surveyed reported running mainframes for production applications. And for these companies, the mainframe continues to be an important component supporting delivery of consumer-facing web and mobile applications, as well as other types of distributed applications. It's also the case that mainframe usage appears to be a significant revenue driver. Despite the fact that only 25% of survey respondents were from mainframe shops, this segment comprised 47%, so almost 50% of all the survey respondents reporting ultra-high revenue growth, which for this particular study, included companies whose revenue had increased by 75% or more over the prior year. And I'm going to talk more about that towards the end of this event. So based on this revenue-generating potential, a key conclusion of this study is that mainframe customers may well need APM solutions as much or more than those that are running other types of platforms. And from the vendor perspective, to address the requirements of this customer segment, APM solutions need to include visibility to mainframe execution as part of standard monitoring and reporting for both distributed and web-based applications. So number 3 relates to continuous delivery, which is another very popular topic right now. And one thing that we're finding is that the impact of continuous delivery on the bottom line can be substantial. But also, as we can see here, the impact on service quality can be questionable at best. On the positive side, 47% of the respondents cited improved customer satisfaction and 43% cited faster revenue growth from the implementation of continuous delivery practices. Basically, the software they were offering to customers and to their internal users tended to be much more up-to-date and in some cases higher quality than it would have been without continuous delivery. On the flip side, however, the impact on application quality is worrisome. Almost 40% cited increased performance and availability issues. You may also have noticed that I've highlighted 2 areas which appear to be at cross purposes. So some companies, quite a significant number, are saying their service quality and service levels have improved, while almost an equal number are saying that the service levels and quality have degraded. And it's interesting to me that, and I'll show you some other instances of this later in the presentation, but we've seen dichotomies like this for the first time in this particular research study. And what this is showing me is that things like service quality and service levels can actually improve or degrade as a result of continuous delivery, and that these dichotomies are based largely on the efficiency and maturity of the IT organization involved, as well as the tooling capabilities, so the APM products and the types of tools they have to help them manage these services. So the number 4 thing that kind of jumped out at me is that some of the technologies that I consider to be sort of emerging technologies are starting to be much more ubiquitous than I would have expected, and they're also starting to impact application support teams. More companies are hosting what I would call non-traditional applications, so they aren't your basic normal business application that we typically think of with APM. More than 50% are hosting video conferencing, and almost 40% are hosting streaming. The evolution towards high bandwidth applications such as these can have a significant impact on network performance and therefore on application performance as well. And this is particularly the case for distributed applications that rely heavily on high-quality network connections. Between 45 and 50% are supporting software-defined whatever, I typically call it. So in this case, basically software-defined networks or data centers. The interesting thing about these types of evolutions in terms of APM is that software-defined environments increase the frequency of variable fluid application topologies. And this is because networks, for example, can be reconfigured virtually on the fly, and the same with the data center elements. Dynamic systems such as these underline a new requirement for auto-discovery functionality within APM solutions with features capable of supporting topology changes in near real time as application environments dynamically change. So if you're on an application support team and you haven't paid much attention to what your network or data center folks are doing, you might well want to take a look at this, because what this is going to do is definitely increase the level of variability that underlies the applications you're supporting. So I mentioned on a prior slide that this research revealed dichotomies in organizational maturity and readiness and tooling systems to support modern dynamic systems. On this slide and the next, you'll see the gap between companies prepared to support software-defined data centers and those that aren't. These distinct differences in operational readiness appear to be related to both skill sets and to tools. Scale appears to be an additional factor that separates the best and least prepared, with mid-sized companies skewing towards the best prepared side, while enterprise-sized companies feel they're among the least prepared. And when you think about it, this probably makes sense, since the larger companies clearly in almost every case have far more scale in their data centers and in their application systems than smaller companies might have. And again, why is this important? Well, software-defined data centers, the infrastructure underlying enterprise applications changes in real time based on software configurations instead of anything that anybody might manually do. So while most IT organizations are still struggling to support relatively static data center architectures, we're also now starting to see the emergence of these sorts of very dynamic systems. This adds another layer of complexity to the management of the data center, and large companies, as I mentioned, in particular, are struggling to manage this complexity. So, in terms of application types, it probably is not a surprise to see that companies, IT organizations, are best prepared to support web applications and least prepared to support distributed, packaged, and fat client applications. Because when you look at this chart, clearly there are a lot of tools. We've been developing tools for many years now to support end-to-end web application execution. But when you look at the bottom of this chart at things like fat client, which aren't as prevalent as they used to be, and distributed applications, there are a lot more moving pieces underneath these types of applications as well. So in a way, this is kind of intuitive, but the point here that I'd like folks to take away is that as overall complexity in terms of componentization and connectedness start to increase, it becomes far more difficult to manage these types of applications. And we're seeing something very similar in companies that are starting to make use of things like containers and microservices, most of which are connected by APIs and which can also result in very complex types of application deployments, particularly when it comes to managing them. Now, to me, this is a very important finding relating directly to today's presentation, and that is that survey respondents identified application performance management solutions as their number one automation choice for accelerating continuous software delivery. And again, this is a topic that, at first glance, these two topics might not appear to be related, but IT organizations in general are reporting that the high rates of change created by continuous delivery are increasing the support burden on both dev and ops. This not only raises the overall costs associated with application support, it also means that dev and ops teams are not available to tackle new projects. As a result, I'm also seeing in a lot of my research studies that IT organizations are also reporting increased project backlogs, both on the hardware and software side, as among their top support-related challenges. Now, to me, this is one of the most important findings of this report, as it once again establishes a clear link between APM solutions and outcomes of continuous delivery practices, because continuous delivery, of course, introduces very high rates of change into production environments, And change for many, many years has been the enemy of IT organizations. In this case, application performance management solutions can reduce the time spent on troubleshooting and root cause analysis, freeing up support teams for higher value activities and also helping to decrease the overall cost of support. So this one, another finding shows that there are definitely key top support challenges that a lot of organizations are facing. One thing that interested me here is that of 12 potential problems being experienced with in-house hosted applications, and remember, these tend to be less complex to support than public cloud or hybrid on-premise cloud environments. But only 7% of the respondents surveyed reporting having none of the above problems. Excessive troubleshooting time, high cost, lack of visibility, slow performance, and intermittent problems are all part of today's application delivery landscape. And of course, again, these are all problems that application performance management solutions are intended to help mitigate. One of the key issues that I've continued to see, and this is over years, this is what you see here probably hasn't changed a whole lot in the past probably 5 years. So basically companies are telling us that troubleshooting takes too long. And looking at the top 3 inhibitors to problem resolution, it's really not that difficult to see how they interrelate. So if the top inhibitor is simply the length of time required to diagnose problems in today's complex environments, the number 2 and number 3 options here reveal why this is the case. Lack of trending information was identified as the number 2 issue, and lack of information about topologies was identified as the number 3 issue. So if you have no way to trend, you really have no way to look at the impact that applications are having on your current infrastructure. And so there's no way to sort of plan and to even recognize when infrastructure is starting to be overutilized. So apparently IT professionals feel that that's a major issue for them. The topology issue, again, is very common, and particularly as applications begin to move into the cloud and span on and off premise, topology becomes a bigger and bigger issue. And if you can't see topologies, if you don't understand how applications impact infrastructure, how they're interrelated among each other, it's very, very difficult to effectively conduct troubleshooting activities. Basically, you can't manage what you can't understand, and without an application or an accurate topology at some level, these complex application systems become very, very difficult to analyze when it comes to determining root causes. And of course, both the auto-generated topologies, things like environmental self-learning and trending based on storage of historical metrics, all are part of the application performance management landscape. Now, this next slide is a broken down view, sort of a subset of what we saw on the prior slide. And what this does is look at companies that have APM solutions in place, either on-premise or cloud-hosted solutions, and looks at the significant differentiators between companies with how companies answer the questions that I asked on the prior slide. So again, these same respondents were asked, which of the following problems is your organization experiencing? As you can see here, those utilizing on-premise hosted APM in particular reported less downtime, fewer intermittent problems, less difficulty troubleshooting, and reduced change-related impact compared to either of the other groups. Those utilizing SaaS-based APM reported reduced instances of slow performance compared to both respondents as a whole and compared to those with on-premise APM solutions. These findings, to me, appear to be a validation that use of APM solutions has a significant and measurable positive impact on application quality, and this is actually one of the first times that I have seen these correlations. So my belief is that as applications become increasingly complex, which they definitely are doing, APM solutions become much more valuable. Finally, we asked survey respondents to identify their top choices for application management related products in the coming year. And I kind of call these questions the wish list. So, if you could buy anything in terms of application support, what would you buy? While SaaS-based APM solutions led as the top near-term acquisition choice overall, this option was far more likely to be favored as the top choice by executives versus line staff. 33% of the executives cited this option, which ranked as the number one choice for this group. Top choices for line staff were synthetic transactions and correlation and analytics tools that consolidate metrics from multiple management solutions. So clearly, developing the end-to-end big picture and being able to analyze metrics from a variety of sources to kind of pull together the big picture are areas of functionality that line staff felt were very important. So clearly they are struggling with kind of putting the pieces together and figuring out how the pieces fit. For middle managers, the top choices included log analysis, correlation analytics. And I think one of the things that strikes me here is that despite the positive outcomes we saw on the prior slide for on-premise hosted APM tools in particular, none of the three groups selected this option as their top wish list choice. We can certainly do additional research into, why they aren't choosing that solution, but I thought that was very interesting. So in short, the takeaways here is that there appears to be a clear role-based preference for the SaaS-delivered APM form factor, probably because in essence it's generally less expensive or easier to pay for, because you can pay by the month instead of buying and installing the solution on premise. And particularly since executives favored that particular type of product, you can see that they're basically trying to make the most of their budgets. Now, this next section here I wanted to include because I thought these factors were particularly interesting. These are not necessarily part of the top 10 that we advertised as part of this webinar, but I thought that these were some very interesting takeaways that you folks might be interested in hearing about. So I think I alluded to this earlier in the presentation, but one of the slices and dices, so basically one of the analyses I did as part of this study, was to just look at the ultra-high revenue producers, so those companies whose revenue growth had been just almost unbelievable during the prior year, and everybody else in the study, so the rest of the pack. And I certainly there were some differences, with revenue growth at lesser amounts, for example, 25 or 50%. But these very high ones really did strike me as being very interesting. So in the first cohort that showed this sort of growth, this consisted of companies which had successfully deployed application-focused versus silo-focused management tools. So in this case, 94% of all respondents reporting ultra-high revenue growth also indicated that their companies are very successful in deploying application-focused versus silo-focused management tools. Only 36% of companies reporting flat revenue growth self-described as very successful in this regard. So basically, the ability to surmount silos and being able to manage across silos is very important, not only to effective application management, but also to revenue growth. Now, in the second bullet point you see here, I talked about this earlier in the presentation, but 47% of the respondents from high revenue companies are running mainframes versus 29% of those whose revenue was reported as flat. In addition, 47% of the high growth companies are running Linux versus only 11% of those reporting flat revenue. 24% are running Windows servers versus 100% of the companies with flat revenue. So, for what these, it's sort of hard to explain the reasons for these kind of platform-related issues, but to me, these sort of jumped out as being very interesting. Finally, companies leveraging service-oriented architecture-based services were twice as likely to be in the high-growth category. 47% of all respondents in this category reported running SOA-based services, compared to those 21% of those with flat revenue growth. And from my perspective, one of the key issues here is that SOA in particular has been very instrumental in helping companies interconnect with other organizations for purposes of information sharing, for things like ordering from suppliers, and also creating services that end users feel as being very relevant to their day-to-day life. So, while application-focused tools, Linux or service-oriented architecture can't guarantee high revenue growth, it appears that usage of these technologies does pave the way for the types of applications that distinguish industry leaders from followers. So in summary, just to wrap up here, we basically right now are in a very interesting time. There's a huge convergence of various types of new technologies. We're in a time of rapid digital change that's brought about basically by accelerated advancements in both technology and in analytics. For many companies, application ecosystems have grown so large and so complex that they're beyond the capabilities of human teams to support in a timely manner. A primary function of APM solutions, which often goes unrecognized, is the fact that these products are built on analytics-based expertise, not simply on automation. So they're not just machines, they also embody a high degree of industry expertise related to application performance and availability, and also application topologies. APM solutions embody the inherent expertise necessary to support complex applications running over today's latest technologies. These tools not only act as expert engines with the ability to detect and report on application health, they do so at a speed, and this is very important, that is far faster than humans can do. And particularly when you get into these types of services that I talked about earlier, the very dynamic software-defined network and data center services, and even API-connected services with multiple component parts, people just can't keep up and manage these services, particularly when it comes to troubleshooting, nearly as quickly as APM solutions can do. I also feel that this research in particular demonstrates that APM investments can yield measurable benefits, including acceleration of software delivery, as well as improvements in service levels, revenue, bottom line revenue levels, cost containment, and customer satisfaction. So that concludes my formal presentation. At this point in time, I am going to turn the event over to Raleigh to moderate our question and answer section. Raleigh?
Great. Thank you, Julie. If you have any questions, you can log those now using the question tab in the left-hand column of your screen. The first question is, can you say more about DevOps practices becoming increasingly important at 31% continuous delivery?
Yes, and I actually saw that question here in the panel, and it's a great question. You know, for the past 2 years, actually 2015 and 2014, I did in-depth research on DevOps and continuous delivery, sort of as going together with one another. And the way I view those is I see DevOps as being a hub around which continuous delivery revolves. If you don't have a tools and personnel infrastructure in place to manage your applications, and if you don't have good control over application type tooling and the ability to automate troubleshooting and root cause analysis, if you try to implement continuous delivery without both the practices and the tools in place, you're going to be fighting a losing battle, because if you're having trouble right now with application performance and availability management and troubleshooting, once you increase the velocity of the change that you're delivering into production, it's going to just exponentially increase the problems that you're having. So, again, DevOps tools, DevOps personnel, the ability to work cross-functionally is very fundamental to continuous delivery. It's basically the hub that's in place that kind of greases the wheels for continuous delivery. And I, also as part of this prior research, just very quickly found very strong correlations between the efficiency of DevOps practices and revenue growth, and also the ability to accelerate continuous delivery of software to code and revenue growth. So, these just aren't sort of pie in the sky initiatives anymore. They basically are becoming very important to the business bottom line.
Thanks, Julie. Let's take one more question. It is, I noticed you made reference to software-defined data centers and software-defined networking in your presentation. How do those topics relate to APM?
And I talked about this a couple of times during the presentation, but the comments I made could equally be applied to things such as elastic computing, where servers are spun up very quickly, and any sort of application and infrastructure related changes that occur on the fly. So, basically once we have software controlling how networks are configured and how data centers are configured, it's going to become even more difficult for human people to be able to follow the topology changes that are going to result. So, to me, again, the ability to automate the process of topology modeling, of detecting changes, start to become very important in these sorts of dynamic environments.
Great. Thank you, Julie. And I wanted to thank our audience for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. Please be on the lookout for the email from EMA tomorrow that will include the on-demand playback and some additional resources. Enjoy the rest of your day.